Hello and welcome into another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. This is your weekly bonus episode recapping the Couch GMs World Cup. This is your first time here. The Couch GMs World Cup is our 4-year, 30-person fantasy football competition to see who is the best of the best. And each week we break down all the matchups from the previous week, give you an update on the standings and all that good stuff around the Couch GMs. I'm Cody Birdcap, one of the three co-hosts of the normal Couch GMs podcast that drops every Friday morning during the NFL season. As always, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at the Couch GMs, and thanks for joining in. But before we get in too far to the World Cup standings, I did want to just recap a little bit of what happened in Week 10. Like to do some news. We'll go over it more on Friday, but the big news is there's two big ones I really want to hit on. The first one, Deshaun Watson is being shut down for the season after needing surgery on his shoulder, so he will be down, and rookie Dorian Thompson will be taking over for him. He did not play great in that first matchup, but they're deciding to go with the rook over PJ Walker, which started for Watson in the past. But that is what's going on in Cleveland, and then there's been a shakeup in Buffalo with offensive coordinator John Dorsey was fired after their loss to the Denver Broncos on Sunday night or Monday night football, excuse me. And then offensive coordinator in the interim will be quarterback coach Joe Brady. That name might be familiar as he was the offensive coordinator for the LSU championship team with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, those guys. And he did have a short stint offensive coordinator before being the guy that was kind of scapegoated. And now he'll be back in Buffalo, and we'll see what that does to the offense. There was a lot of great games. Some came down to the wire. Record-breaking 6 came down to a last minute or last second a field goal. So great week in Week 10. But you're all here for the Couch GMs World Cup recap. So let's jump into it and see how the teams did this week. And this is my weekly reminder to head over to YouTube or watch the video if you're listening on Spotify. I'll put the scores and stats and stuff on screen. I will walk them through there. If you're listening in the car and you're just want to check it out and try to follow along, but it is much easier to see the scores. At least that's how I feel when I listen it back. We're going to kick it off with Group A as I get them on the screen here for you. Make it just a tad bit bigger. As you can see, Ashley Madison continues to dominate at 7-3, is in first place this week still. 7-3 record, so he is tied at with leaving the Browns in La Porta Potty for second place at 7-3. But if you look over here to the points for, he has at least it's highlighting Tyler, who is in fourth overall, currently in seventh spot in points for, but he has 200 points almost more than the next highest team. So definitely dominating in scoring and in first place. But let's get into the week 10 matchups. I keep wanting to say week 7, and I have no idea why. Like, I know the football season is flying, and maybe I just don't want it to end. But Tyler did get a victory this week in week 10 over his brother Nick, 115.98 to 94.14. And as always, we go down here and check out the box scores, see who are the big contributing factors this week for Tyler. Looks like a really solid day. No one broke 20 for him. So to put up 115 points with no one breaking 20 just means your team overall did well. And that did include Terry McLaurin having a little bit of a down day with 5.3 points. On the other side, Nick, he did have his quarterback, Brock Purdy, go over 20, but also had Michael Thomas, 1.4, as Derek Carr did leave the game injured. Jameis Winston filled in for him. Kyle Pitts continues to just struggle with less than 5 points this week. Chris Godwin under 8 points. He's been a little bit inconsistent up and down there in Tampa Bay. But congrats to Tyler. I'm sure he is bragging about it in the victory or in his family group chat, I should say. I mentioned Ashley Madison, who is great at the top of the show. He beat Andrew of the Memphis Pharaohs 189 to 0.36 to 93.20. Almost a 100-point victory margin of victory this week. Straight domination. How did we get here? Dak Prescott, 37.86 points, number one quarterback on the week. Najee Harris had a really nice game against the Green Bay Packers for 17 points. CeeDee Lamb, the guy catching passes from Dak Prescott with 34 points. Jaden Reed of the Green Bay Packers, having his best game of the season with 16.9 points. TJ Hawkinson finishing his tight end one with 24.9 points. Playing George Kittle getting almost 20. So two tight ends at the 19 or higher range will get it done for you. Brian Robinson with 24 points. And then, of course, the Cowboys defense getting 11 points there. So what a dominant week there. And I believe I'd have to go back and check the standings, but I believe 189.36 is now the highest point total of any week of any player across the three leagues in the Couch GMs World Cup. So shout out to Greg there. Let's take a look at Andrew's team, though, see what kind of fell short. And Trevor Lawrence only putting up 2 points in their big loss to the San Francisco 49ers. George tried to tell you that they were going to have a bad game. Trevor Lawrence was there. He was the bet of our week when we spend Tyler's money. If you don't know what we're talking about, that is a segment in the weekly podcast. I definitely recommend you check that out on Friday mornings or Saturday, just before the games get started, because we break down all the games there at the Couch GMs podcast every Friday morning. Tony Pollard still continues to struggle. Jerome Ford did have a nice day, 11 points without a touchdown. That's a pretty good day. Deontay Johnson has been tearing it up since he's come back. And because the Packers couldn't stop anyone on the run, they didn't need to throw. So Deontay Johnson only had 17 receptions and 2.2 points this past week. DK Metcalf, all right. So 93 points for Josh. And now I'm seeing Keenan Allen with 35 points. So I believe he was the highest scoring wide receiver, but that's 1/3, a little more than 1/3 of his points in total with the Rams defense. So those two players alone got him 50, and the rest of his team didn't even get him 45. So rough day for him. Hollywood Brown. Anyone on the bench go off? I forgot to check that in the last matchup, but there doesn't see like any big. I mean, no bench was going to get a 100-point difference, but had to check it out anyways. Let's move on to our next matchup. That is loading. Hopefully, the app does not crash for me this week like it did last week. But that's Chunky got the victory 113.72 to versus Cam 82.68. Let's see if I go to a different matchup. No, the app does not want to load again. So we're going to just recap these matchups here and we'll see if we can get back to them. But then Urban Warfare beat Chaos Reigns 106.06 to 78.32. And then Colin, the closest margin of victory in Group A, fell to Kempe 107.02 to 113.66. So I'm going to pull the off the screen here, refresh the page. Hopefully we can get into those deeper matchups here. And just bear with me, like I mentioned. There we go. Let me pop this back up on the screen for you guys. That's Chunky versus Ikirk, my cousins, as Sean is number 3 overall, 6-4 versus Cam, who is now sitting as the last spot into the playoffs at 5-5. That's Chunky with the 132 win, like I mentioned multiple times now. That's despite having Gerald Everett put up a goose egg in a shootout matchup. Justin Herbert, big reason for this victory here. 28 points. Jonathan Taylor continues to do well since he's been back, and Zach Moss looking more and more like a guy that should just be on your bench at this point. Travis Etienne, rough day. Jags struggled overall as they only put 3 points on offense, 5.4 points. And he had Christian Kirk, who had 11 points, and he had a fumble. Jamar Chase, there was worries about him, but he balled out with 20 points this week, 124 reception yards and a touchdown. And then David Montgomery in his first game back continues to impress. For Cam, Miles Sanders, not it. Brees Hall continues to just be held back by the lack of offense coming out of the Jets. Devontae Adams started to get more involved this week. Amari Cooper had a decent week. Kincaid seems to be a bright spot for the Buffalo Bills. Evan Ingram did disappointed Drake London and the Vikings defense, but 11 points for both defense there, so that was a wash. Does look like the 49ers defense and CJ Stroud on there could have made up about 15 more points for Cam, but that still would not have been enough to get the victory. So that's that matchup. I'll recap these other two. I did mention the scores, but as it does not want to load, NFL is struggling today. This time you're going to get to watch it refresh. Chaos Reigns, the other Andrew in Group A, fell 78.32 to Ryan 106.06, who is now 3-7. He is in the 9th place. and Andrew is fourth overall at 6-4. How did we get here? Javonte Williams, 19 points. Kenneth Walker, 19 points. Mike Evans, 23 points. Chris Olave, 18.4 points. Been playing better with Jameis Winston. I mentioned Derek Carr is hurt, so maybe Chris Olave gets a bump with Jameis Winston because he likes to push the ball down the field a little bit more. Hunter Henry still had a rough day, but that's the tight end position for you. George Pickens, 6 points, not a great day. Had one big catch, which kind of helped him get there. Gabe Davis, better than the goose egg he put up a couple weeks ago, but 8.6 points. Still would like a little bit more out of your flex spots. Andrew's side, Derrick Henry, 2.5 points, and the Titans lost. That's going to be a big disappointment. He was starting to look like he was back to form. Now, the Buccaneers are a really good run defense, but he struggled this week mightily. Lamar Jackson, only 13 points. Expect more out of him. Tyler Lockett had a solid week with 19 points. Zach Moss, I mentioned him potentially being a guy that you can sit now. 0.2 points, 2 rushing yards in the Germany game. 10-6 victory for the Colts over the Patriots. Taysom Hill comes back to earth with only 3.3 points. And we'll see how much that changes now, too, if Derek Carr can't go out on what Taysom Hill is. Both teams had about 30-plus bench points, so not too much would have changed if they both played their best lineups. And this last matchup, hopefully it loads the first time and we don't have to refresh. And I'm sorry, guys, just bear with me. Refresh the page. Don't know why it's doing all this, but Kempe gets the victory that moved him into the second place at 7-3 versus Colin, who is in eighth place at 406, 113.66 to 107.02. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 26 points is the leader for Kempe in that point. Kyler Murray in his first game back did not throw a passing touchdown, but had a rushing touchdown. 17.26 points. Really nice mobility, 33 yards on the ground. Good to see him back out there. Garrett Wilson continues to be a guy that puts up points despite the offense. Not a ton of points, 13.8 points, but with the offense the Jets are putting out there is still impressive and was his own teammate away from catching a Hail Mary on Sunday Night Football. Saquon, rough day in the office with 6.6 points, finished the day with -5 receiving yards. Not great from him. Adam Thielen is 7.2 points. He's been slowed down, but Frank Wright announced he was taking back over the play calling duties like he was the first couple of weeks of the season when Adam Thielen was basically unstoppable for fantasy. We'll see if he gets a little bit of an uptick this week. Devin Singletary, nice day for him, 22.6 points. Any big ones on the Jamar Gibbs on the bench, but Sam Howell was on the bench. Keaton Mitchell was on the bench. So Kempe had more bench points. Jamar Gibbs is one that could have made a little bit of a difference. But all in all, that wraps up our Group A recap. Heading over to Group B, you can take a look at my team where I lost this week, but I'll go into the game center where if you're a listener to this each and every week, you heard I was going to lose this week. And I did. I lost another less than 2-point loss. So back-to-back weeks losing by less than 2 points. This time to the former 0-win team, but now has one. Aaron gets the victory 112.72 to 110.54. Scroll down here, and this one was just a tough day in the office. I had CJ Stroud this week. But he had Jared Goff. I mean, he had Derrick Henry. But Alvin Kamara. I could have caught up points there. Chuba Hubbard, Adam Thielen, all these guys. Gerald Everett with the goose egg. But really, it was CeeDee Lamb and Jahmyr Gibbs. For me, for that was the difference maker in this matchup here. I did have a couple more bench points, but mainly that was thanks to Kyler Murray, which wouldn't have helped me here. But if I would have played Kareem Hunt over Alexander Mattison or Aaron Jones, I might have gotten the victory. If Aaron Jones would have caught the screen pass that was set up well for him that he dropped, that's the margins of error here. Once again, it came down to Breece Hall in prime time. I needed 11 points. He got 9, and he did have a touchdown called back. So just a rough week for me in fantasy, and I called that. I'm going to jump ahead. Another rough week in fantasy as the former undefeated team has now lost two in a row as Bree falls to Reed 117.94 to 101.42. Let's check out these teams here. Taylor McLaurin, Hurts, Taysom Hill, Jerry Jeudy, those people hurt. Lamar Jackson, rough day, 13 points from the quarterback. You want a little more, but Bijan did get more involved, got some red zone touches, 17 points there. Ken Walker. So Bree still has a really good team. Just had Tyreek Hill on bye, is going to get Devon A-Chain back either this week or next as his practice window was open. So Bree is still looking good for the playoffs, and a big win for Reed, who had a nice day here. Jonathan Taylor, we talked about earlier. Austin Eckler, a really good day. We'll probably have another really good day against the Green Bay Packers this coming week. So Reed could be a tough matchup if he moves to the fourth seed, 6-4. Staying in Group B, the next matchup is Sheeler versus Najee and the Jets. Another 2-point margin of victory. This time, Josh gets the victory, 96.98 to 94.66. Sheeler beat me by 2 points last week, loses by 2 points this week. Will Levis, big reason why, 5.96 points. Really rough day for the rookie there after 2 solid weeks as the starter. He did make that up with the 49ers defense having 21 points. So that helped out there. And Josh didn't even play a defense because his defense was on bye, or maybe he forgot to check his lineup, it looks like, because he has the Jets defense down here. So maybe the Jets defense were on bye previously, and then he had a team, and then he made a waiver wire. We have to look in more into that there. But Geno Smith on the bench. So tough week with Tua out, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle. Justin Fields should be back this week. So Jeff is not done yet, and he is 5-5 currently in the 6th seed. So very close here. Marcus gets another big victory over Neil, and Neil might just have some of the worst luck in this league. So we'll look at the overall standings after the last matchups here. But this is another time Neil has finished as the second highest scorer on the week and taken an L at least this season. And again, NFL is just struggling to load the previous week's matchups here. Finally, there we go. So Marcus gets the victory, 147.58 to 133.12. Both these teams fall to 4-6, sitting at the 7th. So the first 2 people to miss the playoffs if they ended today, which stinks because both these teams have been putting up points and playing very well and just having some tough luck in the win-loss category. For Neil, the big number I see is the Jahan Dotson goose egg. It's a guy we talked about been coming on. Straight Sam Howell has been putting up points. We see Sam Howell had 312 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns for 24.18 points on Marcus's team. None of that went to Jahan Dotson this past week. Tony Pollard is the guy that continues to struggle, but here you see it on Ross St. Brown, Chris Olave, David Montgomery, on Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, Javonte Williams, Brian Robinson. So really great week from these guys. And Marcus continues to be a team that if he can just get in, he can make some noise. Because listen, he has Travis Kelce, Jalen Hurts, Puka Nacua all on the bench and still put up, because of buys, and still put up 147 points. So Marcus is definitely a team to worry about if he can find his way into the playoffs over the next 3 weeks. The last matchup is Shelby versus Hayden. Shelby got the victory, 98.78 to 75.30. So not as high scoring or as exciting, pretty average day for a lot of these players. On Shelby's side, the big disappointment is Hollywood Brown, who we've talked about before, at 3.3 points. Calvin Ridley continues to be up and down. Deontay Johnson, we talked about him. Jordan Addison didn't have the best day with Josh Dobbs, 8.9 points. Still solid, but TJ Hawkinson, who Hayden also has with 24.9 points. A really good day. And then, of course, Trevor Lawrence, the two-pointer, is not what you like to see here. But let's check out the league page and see the standings. So Bree continues to be on top at 8-2. Shelby did pass me into that potential buy spot as I fell again this week, as I now moved to 6-4, and Shelby is now 7-3 on a 3-game win streak. So I'm just trying to not let this win streak turn into a missed playoff, or lose streak turn into a missed playoff streak, and get back on track this week. But if we go to points 4, you'll see I am still Squeaking out the edge for most points, but Marcus, who's not even in the playoffs right now, is number 2 by 2 whole points, and then Neil is 3. So 2 of the top 3 teams in scoring are currently missing the playoffs. And if you look at points against, Aaron, who has the most points against, is 1 and 9. But you see the next 2 are Marcus and Neil, who I mentioned have had some pretty rough luck all season long. So we'll see how this shakes. I think there's going to be a lot of movement in Group B. And I'm not just saying this because this is my group, but the group that you're going to want to pay the most attention to over the next couple weeks. But I got one more group for you guys. That is George's group. That is Group C. George took the L this past week. Uh, who did he play though? I can't remember. Oh, he took the L to Doug. They both go to 6-4. But George is the 2 seed, Doug is the 4 seed. So that's how it all breaks down there. Then Dak Prescott, big game. Saquon Barkley, bad game. Kenneth Walker, good game. Adam Thielen, bad game. Chris Olave, good game. Mark Andrews, first time we talked about him today, 5.4 points in the 31-33 loss the Ravens had against the Cleveland Browns. DeAndre Hopkins, disappointment. The whole Titans offense was bad on Sunday. Rashad White continues to look playable and really good, actually, more than just playable. So that's a good one there. So 126.6 points, honestly, is still a pretty good week. And it does look like that would have won every other matchup but the one he played, where Doug had 140 points. And Keenan Allen seems to be the key guy. What can you blame him when he puts up 35 points? Austin Eckler, almost 20. Brock Purdy. Really good win here for Doug. Both teams deserved a victory, but unfortunately, Doug pulled it out here. Excuse me. Next matchup is David versus Mikey B. As David gets the 107 even to 94.72 victory here. And we'll scroll down. And when you lose by less than 10, and I know it's the tight end position, but Gerald Everett puts up a goose egg. Did he have another? He did have Kyle Pitts on his bench, but he did also Darren Waller, who's on IR. So Kyle Pitts wouldn't have done the difference in this matchup here. So really, even despite the matchups, nothing could have been changed to the victory, even though it was a close game. And the Chargers defense giving a -4 made this game closer than it needed to be. But TJ Hawkinson, we'll talk to him, Tyler Lockett. Keaton Mitchell continues to impress. We weren't even sure if he's going to play. And he finished with 13 points with 34 rushing yards, 32 receiving yards, and the rushing touchdown for the Baltimore Ravens as they are looking for some stability at the running back position. Deontay Foreman had a really good week. We'll see if that continues or if Khalil Herbert will be back this week. The third matchup in Group B is Jim of the Greyhounds versus Anthony of Cincinnati's own, who did start the season off rough, got on a little bit of a win streak, but unfortunately went back to the losing side as he lost 116.46 to 87.98. And yes, it is once again lagging to get up on the screen. If you are following along, there it is. Alexander Madison, big reason why. Ramondre Stevenson had a decent week. Cooper Kupp, we've seen this before. We're just not playing people on or playing people on bye cost him. When he played full lineups the last couple of weeks, he had his buys. But Cooper Kupp on bye and Eagles defense on bye. Now, he only had Drake London or Hunter Renfrow as potential options. Maybe he could have looked somewhere else on the waiver wire, as I'm not as familiar with this league. But that wouldn't have got him done there. I understand not playing Sam Howell over Josh Jacobs, so no harm, no foul there. So rough week. Wished you would have played all your guys there, Anthony, as he sits in this 10 spot at 2-8. Starting out 0-7, got 2 wins, now back on the other side. Next matchup is Waddle over the Hill versus my team, which is a 5-point margin of victory as my team gets the victory 124.48 to 119.54. That is Brandon versus Jason. Brandon gets the victory, large part thanks to Brian Robinson's 24.7 points and Javonte Williams' 19 points there. Devin Singletary had a really nice day, but because it's so close, let's check out so it looks like Brandon, if you would have played Mike Evans over Calvin Ridley would have got 20 more points. So I don't think the optimal lineups would have changed the outcome here. Maybe Jalen Warren over, let's see, Tyler Algier. That one would have helped him if he would have just made that move and Brandon didn't. So tough loss there for Jason, but he does get Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle back next week, and he's currently sitting in the sixth spot, and Brandon is currently in first place at 7-3. Final matchup in Group B, or Group C, excuse me. And once again, I have to refresh the page, but it was Maximum Effort getting the victory 111.12 versus Team Snyder 105.92. Any big surprises here? A guy we didn't talk about has been playing pretty well of late, Jonnu Smith. Not talking about because not all people are allowed starting him, but he did only put up 0.6 points in the tight end position here. Steelers defense had a really nice day with 2 interceptions that week. But 6-point difference. Could any of one made a big difference? It does not. Maybe Jaden Reed over Chris Godwin. That might have done it, but again, I kind of don't blame you for playing Chris Godwin against the Tennessee Titans' bad pass defense, and the Steelers haven't been the best, but Jaden Reed and the Green Bay Packers offense. So no harm, no foul. But Maximum Effort and Coleman get the victory. Moves to 5-5, sitting at the 7th seed. But let's check out the standings before we move on to our next segment. Brandon alone at the top at 7-3. Then George, Snyder, and Doug all sitting at 6-4. Then 3 teams at 5-5, 2 teams at 4-6, and Cincinnati's own. And just because I did everyone else, let's see where points for are. George is currently leading in points for, and Cincinnati's own has most points against, followed by. So this one's a little bit more, at least at the bottom, they have the most points against. The top, some of the most points for. So solid week here. That's where we're standing here with 3 weeks left of the 11, 12, 13, 4 weeks left, excuse me, right? Now I'm second guessing myself. Let me jump back in here. Yeah, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So that recaps the Couch GMs World Cup in week 10. But before we get out of here, I have to bring you the quickest Thursday night preview. Alrighty, and I know I called this one the quickest Thursday night preview, but this one probably be a little bit longer this week because most of the time Thursday night football games are not very good, but this one is. It's the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. Now we know T. Higgins has already been ruled out for the Cincinnati Bengals. They are dealing with a little bit of some other injuries. I'm going to pull that up while I talk it through there. But with T. Higgins out, we kind of saw last week that the offense wasn't as explosive. Jamar Chase had a really good day, but there's not really the need to run out there and get, force feed a Tyler Boyd into your lineup, especially this week against the Baltimore Ravens. So I still like Jamar Chase. Joe Mixon is still good to go in your lineups. I like Joe Burrow, even though these matchups are normally a little bit more low scoring. Then because it's divisional and these matchups are really good. But I think it will be a really good Thursday game. And it does look like Trey Henderson was the other guy I wanted to mention for the run defense, and the sack ability for him is good to go. No designation there. So on the Ravens side, everybody that was on the injury report is expected to play. So the big question is Gus Edwards, Keaton Mitchell. And the Bengals, you could probably play both if you needed to. I know there's still some buys this week. Keaton Mitchell seems to be the hot hand as of right now. Just be prepared that just like he was not heard of a couple weeks ago, Gus Edwards could start the game hot and Keaton Mitchell doesn't get very involved. But if I had to pick one of the two, it would be Keaton Mitchell. Obviously, you're still rolling out Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews, but really outside of that, I don't think there's a pass catcher you want to start this week. If you had to pick one, I would always go with the rookie Zay Flowers because he seems to be the most explosive and can turn, a short pass into a big play. But so for recapping, the Ravens side, it's Lamar, it's Mark Andrews, Keaton Mitchell, and then Zay Flowers if you need it. On the Bengals side, it's Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon, and that would be it. But it should be a good game nonetheless. And that will wrap up our Thursday night preview. I guess I should have taken out the screen of the last match. Yeah, on that last match. As always, we will be back later in the week, Friday morning, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get podcasts. Normal Couch GMs podcast. We'll go through every other matchup this week, help you set your fantasy lineups, do some of our favorite bets, and all good fun. We hope you join us there. I'm Cody Roadcap. This is the Couch GMs World Cup, and I'll talk to you all later in the week.